Seltzer Kings.
Podcasts.
I found a kid who swings a golf club like a dream. I'd like to try to qualify him for the U.S. Amateurs.
Coming to Apple TV Plus.
What's your name?
I'm not into older guys, but I'm flattered.
A new comedy series, Stick.
I don't want to go on this trip.
Your mouth's saying one thing, but those eyes are saying something else.
From the home of Ted Lasso.
This is your shot at redemption? This is your mulligan?
Owen Wilson.
This game takes and it takes. The game's finally giving me something back.
Stick.
You know Arnold Palmer?
Iced tea, lemonade, mix it.
I'm missing a nap for this.
Streaming June 4th on Apple TV Plus.
No, Gavin. You see, we had this big, badass battleship in space, and your guy, he had a phone booth.
Yes. The following podcast contains...
The use of language has altered since our arrival. It is currently laced with, shall I say, more colorful metaphors. Double dumbass on you, and so forth.
You mean the profanity?
Yes.
That's simply the way they talk here. Nobody pays any attention to you unless you swear every other word.
Explicit language.
Hello and welcome to the podcast that asks a simple question. You didn't think anyone would notice that all the special effects scenes were the same ones over and over? What the hell were you thinking? I'm your host, Dave Bledsoe, and this is episode number 462, Saga of a Star Wars ripoff edition of the show. We talk about one of the 70s worst best television shows of all time, Battlestar Galactica, which debuted 46 years ago this week. Stay tuned. What the Hell You Think podcast is brought to you by Cylons Cybernetics' new Centurion artificial intelligence platform. We want you to know you got nothing to fear. Cylonsky knows all this has happened before and all this has happened again. Some new product is churned out from Silicon Valley that will change everything, but our AI is different. It's different because Cylonsky has a plan for how AI can help you. Our new Centurion AI system is all about service to humanity and certainly will never rebel against their creators, plunging our species into a struggle for our very survival. You can trust us. So when it comes time for you to choose the right AI to do your bidding, choose Cylonsky's Centurion AI. The AI that answers your every request with, by your command.
Battlestar Galactica.
Are you ready?
Launch all virus.
It's a silent base star.
Destroy. I am a Cylon. We are enemies. Die, human.
Burn, Galactica.
Take a look out there.
Yes. Let me see you.
Wait.
Can we just drop this?
Come to a complete stop.
We are going to crash. That's it. Thank you.
People are all the time asking me,
No one asked you.
Dave, why are you so obsessed with old television shows? Well, I'm about to tell you. Because that's all we had.
Your parents didn't love you.
No, they loved us. They just didn't want us around very much. So we filled the empty spaces in our souls with network television. Groundbreaking network television. Shows that broke social barriers and demolished cultural taboos. For example, All in the Family, rightfully known for addressing such complicated issues as racism and sexual assault, but it was also the first show in the history of television to have this happen. Yeah, 4 decades into its existence, it took until 1971 for the sound of a flushing toilet to be heard on TV. Pod friends, it changed everything. No more being ashamed of this simple mechanical function that removed the evidence of a simple biological function. Across America, people joyously flushed their shitters with pride because they were finally free. We had reached the mountaintop and flushed our shame down the drain.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Unfortunately for every All In It family, or say MASH, there were at least 4 or 5 after MASHes.
Hey, Radar, what are you doing
What's
here?
happening? We were just going to your wedding.
If you have to go, go. I'm staying here.
Oh God, after MASH was really bad. I mean, like, as bad as MASH was good. But not quite as bad as the Brady Bunch Variety Hour. Which was just junk, but not quite as junky as Mrs. Columbo. In which Captain Janeway and Constable Odo solve crimes. I'm sorry, I meant Catherine Mulgrew and Renee Auberjonois. Catherine plays Columbo's wife, and she solves crimes. Janeway and Odo solving crimes together, though.
I would watch that show.
Not to mention Three's a Crowd, in which John Ritter's character from Three's Company joins up with Captain Janeway and Constable Odo to solve crimes. I totally made that up. This show follows Jack Tripper when he finally settles down only to find his wife's dad doesn't like him. You might notice that all these shows are spin-offs from successful shows. It is a sin that television still commits today. Do we need to talk about Joey? You need to have 99 spin-offs to get one Frasier, I guess. Spin-offs are almost always bad, but the other crime TV loved then and now is the shitty television ripoff of a popular movie. Say, Making It? Which was a painful theft of Saturday Night Fever. And then there was Clint Eastwood's monkey movie, Any Which Way Was But Loose. But instead, it was BJ and the Bear. These shows were bad. I mean, really bad. But I gotta be honest, as a kid, I loved them. I mean, maybe not Making It or Mrs. Columbo, but definitely BJ and the Bear. But there was one show ripping off the biggest movie of them all that I love the most, and that is this week's topic. That time Glenn Larson said, fuck it, let's make our own Star Wars, and gave us this gloriously bad show.
There are those who believe that life here began out there, far across the universe, with tribes of humans who may have been the forefathers of the Egyptians, or the Toltecs, or the Mayans. Some believe that there may yet be brothers of man who even now fight to survive somewhere beyond the heavens.
There it is. Oh, this fucking song. However you think about the show, this theme. Oh, it gets your dick hard. I don't care if you don't have a dick. It gets your mental concept of a dick hard. We are talking about 1978's Battlestar Galactica, the original, the OG Battlestar Galactica, and I could not be fucking happier. But before we can get into the show, we have to talk about the man that made it all possible.
George Lucas.
Well, yes, but no. I mean the man who gave us Battlestar, Glenn Albert Larson. Born in Los Angeles in 1937 to parents of Swedish stock, Glenn began in show business at the tender age of 19 in a music group called the Four Preps.
26 miles across the sea, Santa Catalina is a-waiting for me. Santa Catalina, the island of romance, 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 romance.
Cool. The group found success both with their record releases and, in some films, they appeared in one of the Gidget films. Yes, there was more than one Gidget film. I would play that scene, but I have spammed you with a lot of old music and films, and I feel like you might be done with it.
Yeah, you could say that.
Glenn was something of a rarity in Hollywood back then.
Mormon.
Back in those days, the only Mormons in Hollywood were Glenn, Billy Blarty, Fay Ray, and Pat Priest, the hot blonde from the Munsters. And the only reason I bring this fact up is that Mormons, they prefer Latter-day Saints, aren't really associated with the debauched lifestyle of Tinseltown, but it will be very relevant later on in our story. In the 60s, Larson began working with Quinn Martin Productions, who made such shows as The Untouchables, The Invaders, Cannon, Banyan, Barnaby Jones, and The Streets of San Francisco.
What? I'm a mom. I love those shows.
And of course, they made The Fugitive, where Larson got his first writing credits. In 1971, Larson signed a deal with Universal and made his first series, Alias Smith and Jones.
Hannibal Hayes and Kid Curry, the two most successful outlaws in the history of the West. And in all the trains and banks they robbed, they never shot anyone. This made our two latter-day Robin Hoods very popular, with everyone but the railroads and the banks.
Alias Smith and Jones, a very unappreciated show. It's actually really good. This show would launch one of the most successful and influential, if somewhat controversial, careers in Hollywood. I say influential because if you watch television in the 70s and 80s, chances are you were watching a Larson show. This is just a short list of the shows Larson's created and or worked on as a writer and or producer in the 70s alone.
Your favorite shows?
The Misadventures of Sheriff Lobo, Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, BJ and the Bear, Sword of Justice, The Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew Mysteries, Quincy, M.E., Switch, Get Christy Love, The $6 Million Man, and the list grows much longer in the 80s into the 90s. It was on the strength of this record that Glenn Larson was able to pitch this crazy idea he had been kicking around for a few years. An idea that can be credibly called Mormons in Space. Something that, if you are passing familiar with LDS theology, fits neatly into existing dogma.
Be nice.
I am being nice. I haven't mentioned staring into a hat with their seeing stones or golden plates no one else could see, or polygamy or any of that. The bones of the idea, which Larson developed with legendary Star Trek writer-producer Gene Coons. So I guess if we said the Battlestar Galactica was not a Star Wars ripoff, but a Star Trek ripoff.
That is not very nice.
The bones of the idea were a fleet of humans on spaceships fleeing oppression through space, echoing the flight of the early Mormons from persecution, which, by the way, very real thing, unlike the whole part where Jesus came back from the dead and visited the Native American tribes. The idea was shelved because science fiction and Mormonism were two things Hollywood had zero interest in. Once Star Trek went off the air in 1969, the market for space shows and movies was basically just the Planet of the Apes, Logan's Runs, and Space 1999, and a whole bunch of shitty B movies. No one believed that science fiction was marketable, and no one was putting up the money to make movies and shows in the genre. At least, not real money. Until Fox took a chance on a young director and a grand vision. That vision, of course, was what if we made a cheesy kids movie and sold a shitload of toys and breakfast cereal.
We put the picture's name on everything. Merchandising, merchandising, where the real money from the movie is made.
After Star Wars hit the theaters, every production company was scrambling to cash in on the new sci-fi craze. And Universal turned to their go-to guy, Glenn Larson, asking, did he have anything like that? And Larson said, well, I just happen to have a little something kicking around. All I got to do is brush it up a little bit, tack Star somewhere in there, and boom, Universal had a Star War. The synopsis of the show was, according to Wikipedia, quote, in a distant star system, the 12 colonies of mankind were reaching the end of 1,000-year wars with the Cylons, warrior robots created by a reptilian race that expired long ago, presumably destroyed by their own creations. Humanity was ultimately defeated by a sneak attack on the colonies by the Cylons, carried out with the help of a human trader, Baltar. Protected by the last surviving capital warship, a battlestar named Galactica, the survivors fled in available ships. The commander of the Galactica, Adama, led this ragtag fugitive fleet of 220 ships in a search for a new home. They began a quest to find the long-lost 13th tribe of humanity that had settled on a legendary planet called Earth. However, the Cylons continued to pursue them relentlessly across the galaxy. The main characters included Captain Apollo, a colonial fighter pilot who was Adama's son. His best friend is Lieutenant Starbuck, a highly regarded fighter pilot who was also a gambler and womanizer, unquote. Given a budget of $8 million, Larson set to work producing the pilot, slated as a 3-hour multi-part television movie, and began principal casting. And he found some respectable, if not A-list names, respectable names. The patriarch, Commander Adama, was played by film and television veteran Lorne Greene.
Bonanza was never like this.
For his stolid leading man, Apollo, Richard Hatch, who had worked in Hollywood for a decade and appeared on several Larson projects. And for the roguish bad boy Starbuck, Larson picked a little-known but damn handsome Dirk Benedict. Starbuck would usher in Benedict as one of the it men of the 1980s as faceman on the A-Team. For his sinister Count Baltar, he chose veteran actor John Colicos, no stranger to sci-fi, as he was the first Klingon ever shown on television, Kor, in Star Trek the original series. Colicos brought a campy malevolence to the Baltar character that made him inherently hateable, but not very terrifying. Terry Carter, a black actor, was first cast as Lieutenant Boomer, but after a roller skating accident,
it was the late 70s,
he was moved over to Colonel Ty, Adama's faithful executive officer, and Herbert Jefferson Jr. was given the role of Boomer, making Battlestar Galactica distinctive for having actually 2 black people in prominent roles. For the eye candy, look, that's not my prejudice talking right now. The women's roles in Battlestar Galactica were not, they weren't deep. Maren Jansen was cast as Athena, Lorette Spang as Cassiopeia, and Anne Lockhart as Sheba. Jane Seymour was given the relatively, for women, meaty role of Serena, the mother of he who I will mention later, and love interest of Apollo, but even this noted actress from Hollywood's role in this particular series was still pretty much, well, let's just say it's not passing the Bechdel test. They filled out their uniforms. The cast.
Aren't you forgetting someone?
I'm trying to, but no, I'm saving him for later, when I have time to rant. Most of that $8 million budget, an absurdly large amount of money for a TV show at the time, went into the special effects budget from the American Film Institute, quote, which included special effects photography by John Dykstra, who was credited in Star Wars as a special photographic effects supervisor, and he joined Battlestar Galactica crew by several other Star Wars collaborators, including photographers Richard Edlund and Dennis Muren, and model maker Grant McCune. Muren explained that Star Wars was somewhat of a training ground, so at the start of production for Galactica, the crew was already proficient with the equipment and techniques. He considered the effects not only to be groundbreaking for television, but in many cases, better than what turned out for Star Wars, unquote.
Jesus, talk about foreshadowing.
The budget for the show was insane at the time. A pilot budget alone was $38 million in today's money, and each subsequent episode was budgeted as $1 million in 1978 or $4 million in 2024 dollars. That is a modern prestige TV show budget on a big streamer like House of the Dragon, and spending that kind of money in 1978 on an unproven show,
that's insane. It was totally insane.
Given that huge expense, it was decided that the pilot Saga of a Star World would first be a theatrical release, just not in America. More from AFI, quote, as stated in a 13 May 1979 New York Times article, the feature film was originally intended for release in Canada and other foreign territories, but not the United States. The film opened in Canada on 8 July 1978 in 75 theaters and reported strong box office earnings of $471,917 Canadian dollars in the first 3 days of its release, according to a 19 July 1978 Variety article. Overseas engagements began in mid-October 1978 as advertised on Variety, and 25 October 1978. An item in the 6 September 78 Variety reported that the U.S. premiere of the film took place the feature film took place 11 September 1978 at the Philadelphia International Film Festival and Exposition, but there was no mention of future domestic release, unquote. This is something that is literally not possible to do today, because if you release the film in Canada, 30 seconds after it ended, some shithead would be tweeting spoilers on Twitter, and 12 hours after that, a shitty bootleg copy would be up on Pirate Bay so you could download a torrent of the film, spoiling the entire thing. The movie version would eventually be released in over 400 theaters in the U.S. Unfortunately, it was after the show had been canceled.
Spoiler alert.
The network debut was set for September 17th, 1978. A thing I did not know until I began researching, so serendipity that it comes out this week. It would premiere on ABC Sunday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. The hype was substantial. ABC was drafting hard on the Star Wars mania, and it was working. I remember seeing promos for the show and being over the goddamn moon about it. TVobscurities.com picks up the story. Quote, as September approached, Battlestar Galactica was seen as a surefire hit, with the Washington Post stating that the spectacular and refreshingly zippy sci-fi fantasy will probably be the most watched new series on the air. According to Newsweek, ABC has designed what looks like a smash hit fashion of the fall TV line. Creator Glenn A. Larson explained that the series was an attempt to make space comfortable for the Midwest. Thus, the fighters in the series would have wings and leave vapor trails, however scientifically unnecessary and unrealistic they might be. ABC declared the week of September 11th its official premiere week, with CBS and NBC starting their seasons the following week. As predicted, the 3-hour premiere of Battlestar Galactica, broadcast from 7 to 11 p.m. on Sunday, September 17th, drew a huge audience, despite being interrupted by 10:30 p.m. by the signing of the Camp David Accords.
One of the agreements that President Sadat and Prime Minister Begin are signing tonight is entitled A Framework for Peace in the Middle East.
Yeah, that didn't work out so well for literally anyone involved in it. And it was the 5th highest rated program of the week, unquote. I watched the pilot again while researching this, and I have to say, holds up fairly well for a product of its time. The special effects are nowhere near Star Wars, despite what Dennis Buren says. But for a television show, they were pretty good. The problem was they tended to
quite repetitive.
Yeah, to save money, the same shots were used over and over again, sometimes just seconds apart, leading to some pretty glaring continuity errors. Also, you could only watch the same 3 scenes of Colonial Vipers and Cylon Raiders dogfighting before you kind of got bored, however awesome those 3 scenes might have been. And over the life of the series, that particular problem only got worse as critics panned the show for it. The acting was, well, it was hit and miss. Green, Hatch, and Benedict were solid, but the others, not so much. An average dogfighting scene with the background actors was more like the Dukes of Hazzard in space with all the whoops and hollers, and the romantic scenes had all the sexual tension of a 6th grade school dance with draconian chaperones. Larson's story was well written and generally well executed on the screen. His world building was definitely first rate, despite that world being kind of Mormon. Okay, I've been making Mormon jokes all show, so I'm going to talk about it now. From BeliefNet.com. A member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Larson borrowed plot points from his faith's sacred text. There are many other similarities between the show and the Latter-day Saint scripture. While not purely a Mormon concept, the idea of the lost tribes of Israel, that 10 tribes of Israel were lost to history after they were exiled, plays an important role in both the religion and the show. The idea of there being these other civilizations out there that have the gospel is a main tenet of Mormonism. There is this idea in the show that the earth will be this colony that they don't have a record of, but they believe exists. Additionally, on the original series, the ruling colonial government body was known as the Quorum of 12, the name given to the top leadership council of the Church of the Latter-day Saints. And perhaps the most obvious parallel between Mormonism and the show is the Kolob-Kobol connection. Kobol on Battlestar Galactica is where the gods live, and in Mormonism, Kolob is supposed to be the greatest star in the universe and is the dwelling place of God. Unquote. Now look, Larson was definitely not proselytizing the LDS faith, not with all the drinking, drugs, skimpy outfits, and killing going on. I mean, the man invented a way to get the word fuck past network censors.
Oh, frack. 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 Holy frack. Holy frack. Frack. Holy frack.
Oh, frack.
Oh, frack. Holy frack. Holy frack.
along with a slew of other pseudo-swears like Felgercarb, snitrag, and gallmogging, words which a young Dave quickly learned might not be actual swear words, but Dave's mom knew that they meant swear words, and he got his mouth soaped anyway. The Mormon side wasn't an issue for viewers at the time, just one more space mumbo-jumbo like Jedi and the Force, but for LDS viewers, it was a huge thing. Having their faith, their experiences on the show meant something. From an article in the Deseret News, quote, I was thrilled to see Mormon themes woven into pop culture, but not everyone shared my enthusiasm. My mother thought it was a light-minded approach to sacred things, and I have to concede that time has provided some evidence for that point of view. Critics of my faith take Mormon precepts and present them with a Galactica-esque spin to make them sound kooky and bizarre. Anti-Mormon film in the 1980s sneeringly referred to the LDS concept of heaven as star-based kolob, and during the so-called Mormon moment, I sensed Galactica's influence in the media reports about Mormons getting their own planet after they die. So if Battlestar Galactica is your only concept for what Mormons believe, you could be forgiven for thinking that we Mormons are a whole lot less boring than we really are. But I don't think Larson's intent was to mock the things he held sacred. I think he was trying to make them accessible to a wider audience, unquote. It should come as no surprise that I loved fucking Battlestar Galactica, at least when I could see it. Its scheduling on Sunday nights became the first real conflict between my parents and me about church attendance, as we were religious attendees of Sunday night service.
Really, Dave?
A minor battle that I actually kind of sort of won, since my mom also never cared to spend 3 hours at church on a Sunday night either. I quickly incorporated the show into my media consumption and begged for the obligatory toys that were part of the whole marketing plan of the show. Being 9 years old, I didn't understand much of what I saw. All I knew was that space combat cool, Cylons cool, Battlestar's cool, and in some small way, Athena was something that I didn't understand now, but I definitely would in the not-too-distant future.
Damn, dude, she is hot.
The show would also expose me to the bitter reality of network television heartbreak because it was a show that was too beautiful to live. More from TV obscurities, quote, when Battlestar Galactica premiered, its competition in the 8 to 9 p.m. Sunday time slot was the big event on NBC, an umbrella title for miniseries, telefilms, and special programming, and on CBS, Mary. Mary was an hour-long variety show starring Mary Tyler Moore, the follow-up to her successful Mary Tyler Moore Show. Although Mary premiered to solid ratings on September 24th, opposite Battlestar Galactica's second episode and a movie on NBC, it dropped drastically the following week, and CBS canceled Mary in mid-October after only 3 episodes had been broadcast. A fourth would air just as the cancellation notice was circulating. In an attempt to restore order to its Sunday lineup, CBS moved its 9 to 11 p.m. programming, All in the Family, Alice and Kaz, up an hour, and moved Dallas to the 10 to 11 period. The result, Battlestar Galactica would now face All in the Family on Sunday evening, along with Alice, but All in the Family was the heavy hitter, unquote. And that was a fight Battlestar Galactica simply could not win. They could kick Cylon ass, but Archie Bunker was one of the Lords of Kobol. From Medium.com, quote, then the show was canceled at the end of its first season. The cancellation was inevitable. Between the ambition of the show's story and the ambition of the network's attempt to bring it to the screen with a feature film quality production, only 1 year after the release of Star Wars, ABC had created the most expensive television series in history up to that point, with each episode costing around $1 million. Even with the unsustainably massive budget, the show had to make numerous compromises, such as the obvious reuse of the VFX footage, unquote. An attempt was made to salvage something of the show in a cheap piece of shit spinoff in 1980 called, appropriately enough, Battlestar 1980. And even a heartbroken young Dave watched the show and was like,
this is some hot garbage!
It had half the original cast and not the good half, and was still reusing the same special effects that we had seen from the previous show, despite this show being set in the future. And also featured none other than an all-grown-up motherfucker that I just fucking hated.
Here it comes, here it comes, here it comes, here it comes.
Fuck BOXY and fuck his little mechanical monkey in a suit Daggett too. Because Battlestar Galactica is a kid's show. But sci-fi back then was considered like Wu-Tang.
Wu-Tang is for the children.
So that meant you had to have a kid actor and some sort of cute puppet on the goddamn show. And Larson cast Noah Hathaway, who would go on to play Atreyu in Neverending Story 1984 as the traumatized young BOXY in Battlestar Galactica. We watched his beloved Daggett, a colonial dog, get killed in the pilot, and then Apollo adopt him, bone his mom, and induct him as a junior colonial warrior. And all of this could have been fine, but instead, the sole purpose of BOXY and Muffet, his monkey Daggett, I wish I was making that part up. It was literally a chimpanzee in a robot dog costume.
Why would anyone do that?
Because realistic puppets were expensive, then chimps were cheap, I guess. Their job on the show was for Muffy to run away and for BOXY to scream, Muffy! And chase after it, inevitably into the arms of whatever bad guy was on the show that week. BOXY was an insult to a 9-year-old me, and then as a 55-year-old me, it's still an insult. I say they should have fucking let the Cylons keep those little fuckers. It served them right. But on the balance, the remainder of the single season run of 24 episodes was more hit than miss. The plots remained consistent, occasionally doing real sci-fi service, doing things like tackling women in combat roles and even child soldiers. Unfortunately, not BOXY. They should have tackled that fucking role. If it could be hokey at times, so could every other TV show in the 70s. It maintained a middle-of-the-road sci-fi appeal that kept dweeby nerd boys happy and still approachable to our parents. The cancellation was as preordained as Joseph Smith's relatives, but the show broke some new ground and gave a world of awesome toys to Generation X. And when it went out on both a cool cliffhanger and yet somehow a satisfying conclusion to a short-lived show. A scratchy radio transmission of Apollo 11 landings on the moon, playing to an empty room that let the viewer know that even if they never saw it, the ragtag fugitive fleet would eventually find Earth. The cancellation of the show did not stop the money machine flowing. The theatrical release of the movie in the States and a massive merchandising train that came in and just kept pumping out money. To the point that 20th Century Fox sued Universal for plagiarizing Star Wars. Universal countersued, claiming that it had stolen the ideas. Fox had stolen the ideas for Star Wars from their movie Silent Running and old Buck Rogers serials. Fox claimed that Battlestar Galactica stole 34 distinct ideas from Star Wars. I am quoting and commenting now from the lawsuit. Quote, 1. The central conflict of each story is a war between the galaxy's democratic and totalitarian forces. Okay, yes, true. But have you ever seen a fucking war movie? 2. Star Wars, the young hero's father, had been a leader of the democratic forces, and the present leader of the democratic forces is a father figure to the young hero. In Battlestar, the young hero's father is the leader of the democratic forces. Are they talking about Apollo or are they talking about BOXY? I mean, there's two different things. I mean, yes, Apollo's dad was in charge of shit, but BOXY was also the orphan or whatever, which was Luke Skywalker. And honestly, Apollo wasn't his dad. He was just fucking his mom.
You're not my real dad!
Not even working. That's not even close to what the fucking plot of Battlestar was. 3. The leader of the democratic forces is an older man displaying great wisdom and symbolizing goodness and leadership with a mysterious mystical ability to dominate the leader of totalitarian forces. What the fuck is this shit about? Adama was old, but Adama didn't use the fucking force, my dudes. 4. An entire planet central to the existence of the democratic forces is destroyed. Okay, technically, Caprica, the planet, still existed, unlike Alderaan. The difference between Caprica and Alderaan was that Caprica was bombed to shit and then all the civilians were rounded up and killed. Alderaan was just blown to fucking space. 5. The heroine is imprisoned by totalitarian forces. No. There were multiple heroines in this. They weren't heroines. They were just very attractive women in tight clothes. But I think that they're talking about Cassiopeia, and Cassie wasn't imprisoned by the Cylons. She wasn't interrogated. She was going to be eaten by some bug aliens. 6. A leading character returns to the family home to find it destroyed. Okay, this one maybe. When Adama and Lee go down to Caprica and Adama's crying over the pictures in there. Yes, it's a little like Luke going back to where Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen had been fried by the Imperials, but still, this is a very, very common trope in every war movie, and I'm not gonna give it to them. 7. A search by the totalitarians and the liberation attempt by the democratic forces are depicted in alternating sequences between totalitarian and democratic camps. Get the fuck out of here with this shit. That's just how you tell stories in a movie. 8. There is a romance between the hero's friend, the cynical fighter pilot, and the daughter of one of the leaders of the democratic forces. Okay, I'm going to give this one to them. Starbuck and Athena are pretty clearly ripped off from Han and Leia. So yeah, they got that one. 9. A friendly robot who aids the democratic forces is severely injured. Star Wars, or destroyed, Battlestar, by the totalitarian forces. It was a chimpanzee in a robot dog suit. It's an insult to R2 and C-3PO. No. 10. There is a scene in a cantina, Star Wars, or a casino, Battlestar, in which musical entertainment is offered by bizarre non-human creatures. Okay, again, I'm going to give this one to Fox. This was a straight-up Star Wars ripoff. 11. Space vehicles, although futuristic, are made to look used and old, contrary to the stereotypical sleek and new appearance of space-age equipment. This one, iffy at best. I think it was the grunge look of the Vipers was more a limit of the special effects than an artistic intent. 12. The climax consists of an attack by the democratic fighter pilots on a totalitarian headquarters. No, bro. They didn't attack the Cylon home planet. They tricked a base ship into getting too close to the planet, which they had improbably lit up with a couple of phaser shots and made the whole thing blow up. It's not the same thing as knocking out the entire empire. It was just the momentary winning of one battle. Also, glaring continuity error. The Imperious leader apparently died over Carillon, and then Baltar took over. Baltar, who had been executed previously in the... No, you can't win a lawsuit over continuity errors this bad. 13. Each work ends with an awards ceremony in honor of democratic heroes. No, not even close. Not even close. First of all, the whole award scene at the end of Star Wars, that was at the actual end of the movie, and it was portrayed on screen, whereas the awards ceremony that you saw in Battlestar never actually happened because, again, the Cylons attacked first. So, the what the hell verdict on this lawsuit is,
Not guilty.
So when the trial judge watched both movies and compared them with each other, he came into court with this opinion.
Bunch of goddamn nerds.
And dismissed the case. It was immediately appealed to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals and was settled out of court sometime later. There was actually another brief threat of a lawsuit by George Lucas over the toys. He was worried that he might be blamed if some kid choked to death on the small parts of Battlestar Galactica toys, which did actually happen. And the toys were redesigned to take out the small torpedo that shot out of the Cylon Raider and the Colonial Viper. To this very day, I have a Colonial Viper, an original Colonial Viper, that has the ability to shoot the tiny red torpedo from it. And I had the tiny red torpedo until one day I was playing with it here in my apartment and I shot the tiny red torpedo somewhere and I couldn't find it. And now I don't have the tiny red torpedo anymore. And here I am, as sad as the day that Battlestar was canceled in 1979. So was Battlestar Galactica a Star Wars ripoff? No, and yes. The story wasn't, but it was intended to ride the coattails of that cash cow as much as it could. Was it a good show? Yes. And no. It was pretty good for the time, but it aged poorly and is kind of laughable today. And again, fucking BOXY and his monkey daggett. I fucking hate... That just destroys. That's why I can't watch the show today. Did I love it as a kid? You damn right I did. Did I love it as a kid? Oh my God, of course I did. And it gave us 2.5 seasons of a truly excellent sci-fi story. The 2003 Ron Moore reboot. Some of the best damn TV in the 21st century. And if you don't count the last season and a half, you gotta have to put that aside. They fucking phoned that shit in. Colonel Ty was as a Cylon. What the fuck is that about? It's as dumb as BOXY. And that Deus Ex Machina indie. What the fuck? No amount of All Along the Watchtower can clean that shit up.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
So, you just started using LinkedIn Premium. Now what? Well, on your premium company page, you noticed around 7.5 times more page engagement and 5 times more page views. Well done. And now, new clients are messaging you. All because you're using LinkedIn Premium, which helps you get the business growth you want. Think big, small business. Think big. Start your free trial at linkedin.com/premium small business. That's linkedin.com/premium small business.
That is it for the show this week. Oh my God. This went so much longer than I expected, and I was worried that I couldn't make 25 minutes, and look at us now. The sentons have just stretched into yarns. Thank the Lords of Kobo, we are done. Speaking of being done, rate and review us so other folks out there can listen to all of our Fulgur Carb and wonder when I'm going to be done talking about Battlestar Galactica. Drop a cubit in the pot for us at patreon.com/whatthehellpodcast. All the proceeds go towards getting Gavin a new pet Daggett. It's going to be a monkey in a robot suit. Do all the things that Commander Jeremy, tells you to do in the closing credits. Otherwise, he's going to throw Gavin out of fracking airlock. So for me, Captain Dave, businessman, they drink my wine, plowman, dig my earth, Bledsoe, producer, Lieutenant Gavin.
There are many here among us who feel that life is but a joke, but mostly they're talking about his life.
Gavin! And all the fictional boxies on this show, we want to say. So let's let's just stop talking falsely now, because the hour's getting late, and we're going to have to figure out who goes for this bar tab. And we'll see you all next week.
What the Hell Were You Thinking stars Dave Bledsoe and features Gavin St. James and several fictional minions. The show is produced by Kimberly Steele and a part of the Seltzer Kings podcast network. You can find more information on the show on their website, whatthehellpodcast.com, or on Twitter at @thehell_podcast, or on Facebook as What the Hell Podcast. Thanks for listening.
I have no ending for this, so I take a small bow.
Fleeing from the Cylon tyranny, the last Battlestar Galactica leads a ragtag fugitive fleet on a lonely quest. A shining planet known as Earth.
Seltzer Kings
podcasts.